Hi, everyone. Welcome to Now Next Later for Monday, December 1st. Thank you for joining us live. We always appreciate that. We are also streaming live to YouTube today, Sasha. So continuous improvement here at Now Next Later. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jer?
Excellent. I'm doing well. Coming off a long weekend, it's always great. We had some time to rest and then be back at it. How was your Thanksgiving weekend?
Yeah, good. We were talking about it earlier. I just moved from the West Coast to the East Coast this year and got to see some first snow over the weekend. So that was a lovely treat.
It is. Yeah, we stayed in Detroit this year and got 3 or 4 inches. And there's an outdoor skating rink right downtown. My daughter met up with her friends, so it was like skating in the snow on Thanksgiving weekend. It was pretty special.
I love that.
Yeah.
Magic of the season is real.
So for today, everyone, we want to continue to take your questions as always on our Now Next Later topics. Sasha and I are going to dive in to our topics today. So Sasha, tell us what we have coming off of Thanksgiving. What are our Now Next Later topics for today?
I don't even know if I remember all the topics, but my favorite thing that I remember is that we're going to do it leftover style, which we have done before.
Leftover.
So, we're going to give a name to the various things that are always, I would say, going on, but what's our take on them, particularly for 2026, as we relate it to a leftover from Thanksgiving, and or aside from Thanksgiving. We can play with both, right?
That's right.
And then I know that you've got some additional topics. I saw a post that you made around an article, I think from The Economist over the weekend, and just some interesting hot takes, I'll call it, in the mortgage space right now. So we're going to go all over.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a bunch of like specific things that we're all kind of talking about. And then there's these macro trends that seem to really be coming fast toward the industry. So glad to hear it. I love the leftovers after a weekend like this. We've got Cyber Monday today. Hopefully people aren't shopping during our show, but they'll wait till after to cyber shop. And then tomorrow, Giving Tuesday. So hopefully you have a cause that you're going to be supporting tomorrow. So yeah, good. Let's jump right in.
Yep. Okay, so let's pick something to start with. How about mortgage rates in 2026?
Always. That's always the question, right?
Right.
I had been following this in part because it's always such a big topic. You go to like a conference or you just happen to check in on Mortgage LinkedIn, and it is, here's what's happening. Here's what's happening with rates. Prediction this. By the end of the year, we'll see this. In the first quarter, we'll see this. But one of the reasons I think it's important is we've seen such volatility. There's uncertainty in the GSE outlook, what types of product and pricing they're supporting right now, how their rate sheet's changing. We're seeing some volatility. I was mentioning to you a little bit earlier about we don't know what overseas conflict means for rates. Anytime there's whispers of overseas conflict or like direct foreshadowing of overseas conflict, our industry tends to start thinking refi at that point. And so I think between all the things we're discussing, we're kind of seeing a clash between the economic indicators and the cultural indicators. What I mean by that is there's a ton of uncertainty on the cultural indicators, like household formation, first-time home buyers, what consumer confidence looks like. But that's crashing into like relatively typical economic cycles, which would indicate normally that we get some refi. So I'm really interested, and me kind of like, as Robbie Chrisman would tell you, always a little too philosophical for the show, but it's our show. So I will say that, for the philosophical side of me says, I think more than ever, we're going to see that clash where rates are dropping from an economic perspective, but I'm not sure what that's going to actually do to volume because people are still feeling a little uncertain about what to do, sitting in a low rate and not sure if now's the time. And when people aren't sure, they tend to just wait, procrastinate.
Yeah, I give it the pumpkin pie. It's always there. It's somewhat dependable, but depending on who makes it and how they make it, may go one way, may go the other, right?
That's right. Good analogy. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I like the cultural, and what was the other, economic clash, right? Like that there are just, again, we talk about this, I feel like on every show, things continue to get more complex. We continue to have more inputs into the system. And when you have more inputs into the system, it just makes things more nuanced and harder to really find an algorithm that says, if X, then Y, right? We've got too many permutations at this point.
Yeah.
But within that, you mentioned buyer demand. And so let's go there, or maybe it's a consumer demand, but let's go there next. What are you thinking in 2026? I mean, we've got a very diverse set of buyers out there, but also some that are sitting kind of waiting to see. So what are you predicting? What are you thinking? And then we'll give it a leftover name.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I think the biggest question here is where and how can I buy? And one of the things I think I've been beating the drum on that doesn't seem to be getting momentum yet, but I'm going to keep working on it, is that there is actually pre-approved credit. And I call it walking around in our cities, in our markets all day, every day. I think we have probably one of the biggest pipelines of credit pre-approvals that we've seen. And it's really high quality credit pre-approvals in many cases. And they're not buying, or they're not finding something to buy. So everybody shifted this year and started focusing on, well, it must be a supply problem. We have to get people who own their homes free and clear out of their houses. We have to get people in a 3% rate or a 2.5% rate, get them moving, get them out. And I think to a large degree that is true. But we have more free and clear owners than ever before. So I'm not sure that there's anything we're doing on the market, the mortgage market side, that's going to be able to address that. So I see more gridlock in 2026, to be honest. And I think buyers are going to start doing two things: looking for alternatives more aggressively than ever before. And some of those will be alternatives in residential real estate equity, meaning they'll try to invest, they'll try to co-buy, they will try shared equity down payment stuff. They're going to go towards some kind of like either flashy or substantive alternative that's out there, because I think what they'll see, and I think the way we should start talking about it in our industry, is if you have Fannie Freddie credit approval, that's actually the 30-year amortization that you want. That's your investment. That's what you want back. And if we start talking like that, we can actually build innovative partnerships and products around that to say, okay, I just pre-approved you for $400,000. Typically, that person goes and starts looking for a $400,000 house, plus or minus 5%, right in there. I think what we need to be saying is, all right, you have a $400,000 pre-approved credit amount to invest in the market. Let's see where you want to put it. And if somebody else comes in and wants to buy 20% of a house with you, or 10% of a house with you, or even 50% of a house with you, I think we need to start thinking that way and talking that way and figure that out, figure out the safety and soundness of those products. So I think that's one. And then two, alternatives that are scarier for our industry are, I think people are just going to start looking for other ways to invest their money. We're going to start seeing online investment in commercial real estate or rental. We're going to start seeing probably more in the crypto or just market equities space, because people are going to be like, you know what? I'll just keep renting. My rent goes up, but not in a way that makes it prohibitive to like shopping for 4 months and never finding anything.
Right.
So I'm just going to start going elsewhere. And I think we're going to see it peel off more so in 2026 than we've seen before, unfortunately.
Okay, so I feel like, and you're gonna have to weigh in, and I want to take this two different directions. So first direction is, let's assign it like a name for Thanksgiving meal. I feel like this is the turkey and the alternative to turkey. Hear me out.
I'm listening.
The turkey, because maybe you're normally like, oh, I'm going to eat the white meat, the breast. And then this year I decided I'm going to go for the leg, right? So that's like the first part of your argument, which is I might try something a little different, but it's still a turkey.
Yeah.
And then the other one is like, oh, I'm going to go to ham, or I'm going to go to lamb, like, or roast beef. Like, we're going to do something completely different. Not usually, I mean, ham is sometimes on the menu, but let's maybe go roast beef and lamb. I mean, I'm Serbian, so we eat lamb for every meal. That's what I'm thinking. How are you feeling about that analogy?
I think that's a great way to describe it. I think the thing that will take it even a step further, isn't there somebody at everybody's family meal that just skips the turkey altogether and just has a plate of sides? It's just, yeah, exactly.
That's
plate
me.
of sides.
I love turkey. I want turkey the next day on my sandwich, right?
Yeah.
The other way I wanted to take this was, I was in DC having some meetings last week, week before last, excuse me. Sorry, time is elusive. And interesting conversation with somebody on the Hill about how, like, once upon a time you got qualified for 400,000, but that didn't mean you needed to go spend 400,000, you know? And so we're not always a generation, conglomerate of generations right now that learn to live within our means the way that maybe our parents or our grandparents did much better. And so, what happened to the financial literacy and education? And I know, we've had Kristen on before with First Home IQ, and there's other efforts going on there. But what happened to that? Like, just because I get approved for 400 doesn't mean I need to be spending, $2,000 on a mortgage every month. Like, maybe it does make more sense for me to look at the 350 range. So I think that's another opportunity for us as an industry. I know we all want to make money. Obviously, that's, part of why we are here. We need to be in business and feed our families, but maybe we should be more mindful of how we're educating. And it's not just don't necessarily need to go all the way up to what you're qualified for, but maybe you look at these other alternatives that you're mentioning around shared equity and reframing it as a true investment.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things I've been trying to find time to research, and I'm really glad that you brought it up, is like square footage / footprint that a first-time home buyer today needs or feels like they need. And we know it blew up. We know it expanded a lot. It depends how far you want to go back, 25 years, 15 years, 10 years, whatever it was. The first time home buyers saw their square footage go from that, 900 to 1,200 square foot home to like a 2,500 square foot home. And I think that one of the things we got to ask our first time home buyers and ask the market and builders to me went in the direction of, if land is really expensive and I've already had to buy it or own it, and my materials are getting more expensive and my labor is getting more expensive and compliance is getting more expensive, then I might as well build a 4,000 square foot home because I already own the land and it doesn't behoove me to build a 1,200 square foot home, or it doesn't behoove me to build 4 duplexes on that lot. And so they went for it. The market, it found a market.
Yeah.
And what we ended up happening, though, is we kind of skipped over this period where now we don't have any 900 to 1,200 square foot units that you can actually own. Yeah. And if there's like enough cool stuff in your market, we know people will live in a smaller house. We know this. And even if there's not, I think we're starting to see first-time homebuyers want more manageable asset because they understand that they want more bang for their buck. I always joke, do you know where tiny houses are really, really popular? Manhattan.
Yeah, I was gonna say New York.
Yeah, because they don't actually need the square footage. It's like, oh, nobody's ever going to live in 800 square feet. Really? They do in a high rise in Manhattan. So like, what are we talking about? It's where the house is and it's what the buyer wants. And I think if we did a better job connecting our industry to the builder, honestly, not around these partnerships where the builder holds the lender captive, fine, they're going to get those leads. I'm saying like advocate at a really high level, the MBA at any level, saying to builders, did you know we have 13,000 pre-approvals in your market? We have 22,000 pre-approvals in your market. We have 50,000 pre-approvals in Dallas or wherever. Don't you think we could achieve 5 to 9% conversion of those pre-approvals if we had a builder building into those? We don't connect them that way. There is no visibility. And so as a result, they're nervous to even build 200 homes, never less 2,000. And meanwhile, we have people. We haven't really adjusted cost and square footage. There might be major economic factors that tell, somebody would respond to me and say, it's never going to happen. Here's why. But I don't buy it because I think people want to build and they want to move inventory, and we'll figure out the right, size and shape, but we're not at the table.
Yeah.
To use the Thanksgiving table analogy, I guess.
Well, I'd say it makes me think of mashed potatoes. Everyone always wants more.
Yep.
There's never enough. And if we came together, maybe we could make some more mashed potatoes.
That's right.
What I'm hearing, right?
That's what we need. We just need more mashed potatoes. It's everyone's favorite.
That's right. So let's think about affordability, because this one actually makes me a little sad, if I'm being honest. I feel like it's the leftover salad that's like sluggish, that you like want it to be better than it is. And it's just still not making strides at the level that we were all hoping for. I mean, I feel like the pessimist or the Scrooge here, but like, I mean, I feel like we should be able to make more strides than we have. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I want to tease next week's Now Next Later a little bit here. We have Bree Lee's coming on to talk about, how we communicate, market, and sell to consumers. We do a really good job, I think, talking to MLOs and talking to agents and referral sources. And I don't think we actually do a good job talking to consumers. And so I'll give you an example. We talk a lot about lowering the cost of origination, lowering the cost of operations, lowering the cost here and there. And I'm not sure why we keep trying to make this promise. It isn't working. We've not done it. So wouldn't the rational thing to do would be to stop promising something that you can't deliver on? And so I think, to me, where we are on affordability is we need to understand the list price of the house relative to the cost of fees that go into it. But if we continue to have 6 licensed experts, all who have credentials and expect compensation to match their expertise and credentials, I don't care what we do on AI, we are still going to be paying 6 people. When I say 6, by the way, for the audience, we're talking, there's a seller's agent, there's a buyer's agent, there's an MLO, there's a title agent, there's an appraiser, there's an inspector. If that title agent in some states is a lawyer, I mean, it goes on and on. So we're going to continue to promise to lower the cost of a home loan and yet not actually subtract anything from the transaction. I think we should stop promising, or we need somebody to step forward and say, here's how we actually talk about this with consumers, and either get there or not.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I know next week with Bree on, we'll have some interesting conversations. I'm sad I'm going to miss that episode. And then the week after, we're actually bringing Shelly on.
Yes.
Obviously, a lot of noise around credit costs right now in the industry. So we'll cut through those noise and look for the signals. But I think you're spot on, right? There are costs that will be driven up regardless. And it's not to say that it's right or that we want it, but it's the reality that we face. And so softening that blow the best that we can is one avenue, And then the other, to your point, is being more realistic about the promises that we're making and finding new creative solutions to really make home ownership accessible. And that might mean that we have to change as an industry. Oh my gosh, big scary word.
That's right. And we've made it clear we don't love that. We don't want to. And we've resisted it. We've resisted it for a really long time. I mean, I think next week's conversation will focus on, who's the customer. And I think we could start to get at some real self-reflective questions as an industry. I know we have a lot of tech vendors and technology companies that watch this show. And I think, when you come from the tech side, you spend a lot of time asking, who is the customer? What are we focused on? How do we actually solve either the needs of the customer or the tasks that we're asking them to solve? And I saw some research from the Stratmore Group that they do a lot of secret shopping.
Sure.
They were secret shopping retail MLOs, not consumer direct, retail MLOs, who were sending out a link in their very first email. Hey, Sasha, just got your name from your agent. Here's a link, get started. No contact, no value add, just like sending that person directly to the essentially self-originated pre-approval or even self-originated 1003.
Wow.
And that's an example of like, okay, well, if we're sending the message, 5 times out of 6 or, even 50% of the time that you can do this yourself, people are going to start believing they can do it themselves. So like, that's, to me, those are some of the questions of like, what are we in this for? And how do you talk to your customer? If you're a tech vendor, how do you talk to your lenders and MLOs? If you're an MLO, what do you ask for in terms of tools? Because unless we change something, nothing will change.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then it leads me to, the other side of change, which is the one that is maybe more scary because it's unpredictable. We never know where it's going to go. I call this the mystery dessert that the family member brings to Thanksgiving. And you're like, this could go really well, or it could go really bad, depending on what's in it. And that's policy change, right? Like, sometimes it's fantastic and it drives our industry in the right direction. And other times, like all the best laid plans, in theory, it sounds great, or maybe doesn't so much, but nevertheless, in application, it does create issues for us. And I think about, mortgage limits, the new tax rules coming into play. Like there's just so much that's going to change in the industry next year. And it's like, what else, right? And how do we predict whether or not policy and lending requirements are going to actually drive us in the right directions? Or to your point earlier with that cultural economic clash, perhaps be a clash to our progress as well.
Yeah, let's actually rewind a year ago. Right around this time, we were talking about what would we likely see, or what could we see, right? The people inside the Beltway, I think even as far back as 2024, but certainly last year this time, were telling me we are going to have a reckoning on the tax code in this administration. And this was pre-election. So they were like, regardless of who wins, so there are expiration dates on a whole bunch of things that require Congress to have this reckoning. And so we've seen a lot of that chess game, I think, already playing out, where people are making moves because they know we're about 9 months away from what insiders are calling the Super Bowl of tax. And the one we're seeing the loudest in our industry seems to, and this is just in the last few months, seems to be the capital gains adjustment for selling your house. Could we waive some of the tax treatment, or all, I guess, of the tax treatment for the gain on sale to get people moving? That gridlock I was talking about earlier. So that's one where housing is going to get pulled in for sure to that policymaking, regulatory, and legislative battle this coming year. And then I think, the other thing we're not hearing about, but I'm sure is there in the background, is land, right? We heard about federal land a year ago. Are we going to build on federal land? Where is that federal land going to be? I've been talking for a while about using housing as an economic engine. I actually think housing is a stimulus to the community and to the economy. And I think if you find ways to invest or create incentives for jobs that create housing to me is an exponential return on each dollar spent. A lot of I'll use local government for a second, but then pivot back to the policy question. A lot of local government loves tax credits for real estate development, commercial or residential. To me, those tax credits disappear. They become really hard to measure after 10 years. Did we get our money's worth on this 10-year tax credit from this development? If those governments started thinking about investment of those credits differently, started thinking about how they would become developers themselves in partnership, public-private partnerships, actually own part, I think that's a huge thing. But if they created job programs that developed either saved housing, like residential construction, residential renovation, or just factory-built manufactured housing, you're talking about creating a job that now has income. That income gets spent in the community and gets taxed, creates a house. That house gets put somewhere in the community. That is a economic boost, and it gets taxed. You can spend $1 on a job that creates a house, and you can get multiple dollars back instead of tax credits, which are one for one and often are very difficult to take credit for or measure years later. So for me, it's always been, let's use housing as an economic engine. Politicians love housing anyway, like everyone does, and let's lean into it.
Yeah, I know you're going to circle back to the policy one. So I'm going to put a pin in that because I want to end on that one. So circle back to policy, and then we'll do our final later as this economic boost with housing, which I love.
Yeah, so I think the GSEs have to decide what they're going to do on construction lending. Are they going to forward fund? There's been a lot of momentum. The GSEs have to decide, are we forward funding construction loans? Are we going to help with construction to perm single family development? Obviously, you mentioned talking to Shelley, we're going to get a clearer picture on what shakes out on credit availability and eligibility with FICO and the bureaus. I actually think the cost of the report or the cost of the score is actually not the story. I actually think the story is, what does this do to illuminate who can buy a home in America and who can't, why? I think that's actually the story that moves things in the Beltway. That's what kind of gets people excited if you're a senator or a member of the House, to be able to go back to your district and say, what we did here does this. What we did here does that. I don't think we're going to get a lot of momentum from people going back and telling their constituents they saved them $13 on a report. we're going to get momentum by people saying, we understand you want to buy a house. We want you to buy a house. Don't move to Florida. Stay here and buy a house in our community. And I made that possible for you with this policy. And so I think we'll see more of an eligibility, not increasing risk, right? Using data the way we always talk about here on Now Next Later to say, no, these people can actually look at their rent payment, look at their cash flow, look at their updated credit score, and now tell me they can't afford a house. They've lived in the same community for 10 years and they've made it work with rent. Right. Why can't we get that person? Those types of conversations that's what politicians want to run on in the midterms. And we have to give them that opportunity with the policy making around eligibility. So I think construction, I think eligibility. And then obviously there will be what we already mentioned is, how do a lot of these homes get back on the market? Well, one way is downsizing. Free and clear houses, getting passed down to kids before. When I say before it's too late, I just mean before those kids are themselves retired. Yeah. Get those houses moving. A good portion of those, the family will make the decision to put them back on the market. So we've been hearing about this silver tsunami forever. I don't think it hits in 2026, but I think we got to make policy around it in 2026 when we have the opportunity. That's tax and that's mortgage product eligibility. If we did that ahead of time, it might be the first time we proactively did anything, but it would work.
Yeah, I love that. So on that, I want to end with, I don't know about your traditions, but Thanksgiving, I always love the tradition when people go around the table and, say one thing they're grateful for. And so parlaying that into our later conversation, I have takeaways that I'm grateful for because I feel like it shifted my perspective and I hope it did for the audience today too. And then I want you to weigh in on anything else that you would add. So what I'm hearing is 2026, start asking the right questions, right? I think oftentimes we try and solve the problem with the same mindset that created the problem. And as a result, we just keep getting more of the same. And so how do you shift your mindset, your perspective, and start asking the right questions? Don't wait, right? We can't wait on rates. We can't wait on policy, can't wait on anything, right? We need to create the industry that we believe pushes us forward in the right ways. I love this concept of, in that same regard, using housing as an economic stimulus, as an economic boost. Again, reframing this as it is an investment. This one goes with the hand in hand with one another. We don't need policy for the sake of policy.
Right.
We need policy that actually drives change forward in a holistic manner that considers our ecosystem soup to nuts. And I think how we consider that and everything else I mentioned is, don't be defined by our past, but remember where we came from, right? Because we can learn lessons from where we've made mistakes and we can do better, but we shouldn't be held back by that either.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The criticism I get a lot when I suggest change or suggest alternatives is that somehow it diminishes the tremendous value of the 30-year fixed over the last 100 years, or about 80 years. I can't be more clear on it has been one of the most revolutionary financial products in the history of this country, probably the world. There's no denying that. I also think, to your point, that doesn't mean it doesn't deserve scrutiny from time to time to say, are we sure it's still doing that? Are we still sure it's doing the thing we built it for when we built it? And it hasn't gotten a lot of that, test. I think the creativity around the mortgage crisis, and when I say creativity, the pushing of the boundaries of credit risk rather than product structure around those moments has really lasted a long time. The legacy of that has really hurt financial product innovation. And so as a result, the question becomes, is this thing the thing we want it to be forever? And maybe it is. I'm saying maybe it is. And maybe, what my friend Mike, you would tell you from Vesta, Mike would say, this isn't a financial engineering problem. Stop financial engineering. This is a supply and demand problem. But I also think that unless we really understand what's happening in the market, we're left with the same dichotomy all the time. And to your point, the takeaway is, hey, we have this moment where we're questioning almost everything from a policymaking perspective. I was talking to some people inside the Beltway, and I was like, it feels like anything can happen with this administration. They're like, yeah, anything can happen. Well, great. Let's use that as our opportunity to say, we think this is not just the economic engine for communities I mentioned. We actually think this is a necessary asset for a generation of people to be meaningful contributors across the thing. If we want people spending money at small businesses, the best thing we can do, create more customers, because small businesses love customers. So we need people shopping. If they're not shopping in our communities, then the small businesses would go away too. So to me, it's like, it's a generational question. Will this be the moment that we turn and say, we're going to give them the tools they need because this is fundamental to the economy and our communities? We think it is. Let's not be afraid to ask that question, even if it's a little scary for what it means for my business.
Yeah, I love that. And I look forward to next year, this time, looking back and seeing, like, did we do it? Did we at least move, the needle enough that we feel like we're making progress for the reason that we all got into this business? So we're up at time. Any final words or?
Yeah, thank you for spending the time, as always, on Now Next Later. Looking forward to everybody coming back next week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving.
Take care.
Bye-bye.